everyone, and welcome. Today, we're diving deep into the very foundation of credible evidence in nursing, the research design. Think of it as the essential starting point for any discovery, and we're about to break down exactly how it works.
It really all boils down to this one big question. In a field like nursing, where lives are on the line, how do we make sure our answers are more than just good guesses? How do we know they're trustworthy? Well, the answer lies in having a rock-solid plan right from the get-go.
And that's exactly where this idea of a blueprint comes into play. A research design is literally the detailed roadmap for a study. It's the whole structure that tells us how to collect, measure, and analyze our data to make sure the entire process is as buttoned up and controlled as possible. So, why is this blueprint such a big deal? Well, because without it, even the most brilliant research question can lead to some pretty weak or even totally misleading conclusions. Let's dig into what this plan actually does for us.
A really strong design serves four crucial purposes. First off, its main job is to maximize validity, making sure the answers we get are actually true. Second, it gives us a clear structure so we can make meaningful comparisons. Third, it helps us control all those outside factors that could mess with our results. And finally, it's our guide for every single decision we make along the research journey.
Right. So what's the difference between a solid blueprint and, well, one that's just going to fall apart? Knowing we need one is step one, but understanding what makes it strong, now that's what really matters for producing top-quality research.
Turns out, every really strong research design, especially in a hands-on field like nursing, has to have four key characteristics. You can think of these as the pillars that hold up the whole study, making sure the results are trustworthy.
First up, we have objectivity. This just means the results have to be based on measurable facts, not what the researcher hopes or believes is true. And think about it. In nursing, a biased conclusion could lead to practices that just don't work, or worse, are harmful. That's why we rely on standardized tools and super strict methods to keep personal opinions out of it. Next up is reliability. And honestly, the best word for this is just consistency. If another researcher took your exact methods and ran the same study, would they get the same results? A reliable design means the answer is a confident yes. It's all about producing stable, consistent findings. Then there's validity. And okay, this one is huge. A study is valid if it's actually measuring the thing it claims to be measuring. It's about accuracy. It's asking, are our conclusions a true reflection of reality? Are they actually meaningful? And last but not least, generalizability. Fantastic research isn't just true for the 50 people in the study. The goal is for the findings to be useful and applicable to a much larger group, the population that sample came from. This is what gives research its real-world punch. Okay, so we know what a good blueprint looks like. Now let's talk about the absolute gold standard for figuring out cause and effect. When you want to know if one thing causes another, you turn to the experimental design. So what gives this design all its power? It comes down to one thing: vigorous control. An experimental design isn't passive. It's not just about watching things happen. It's about systematically testing to see if A really does cause B. Any true experiment, and I mean a true one, is built on three pillars. And these are totally non-negotiable. You miss one and the whole thing isn't a true experiment anymore. So let's break each one down. Pillar number one is manipulation. This is an active process. The researcher doesn't just sit back and watch. They actively do something. They intentionally change or manipulate the independent variable, that's the cause or the treatment, to see what happens to the dependent variable, which is the outcome. Let's make this super clear with a classic nursing example. The researcher applies a cold pack to one group of patients before an injection, but not to another group. The manipulation here is the cold pack. That's the cause, or the independent variable. The outcome they're measuring is the level of pain, the dependent variable. Simple as that. All right, on to our second pillar, control. This is so important. Look, if you want to know for sure if your manipulation, the cold pack, is what really caused the change in pain, you have to make sure nothing else is interfering with your results. Control is all about isolating the effect of your intervention. And the classic way to do this, you guessed it, a control group. The experimental group is the one that gets the new intervention, our cold pack. But the control group doesn't. They provide a baseline for comparison. By looking at the difference between the two groups, you can be much more confident that it was your intervention that actually made the difference. And that brings us to our third and final pillar,
Randomization. This means every single person in the study has an equal, totally random chance of ending up in either the experimental group or the control group. And I want to be really clear. This isn't about convenience or just picking people haphazardly. It's a deliberate, systematic process based on pure chance.
So why do we go to all this trouble? Because randomization is the great equalizer. It wipes out selection bias. It ensures that any other factors, things like age, gender, or overall health, are spread out evenly between the two groups. It makes the groups comparable right from the very start. Okay, let's pull all this together, right? To build reliable knowledge in nursing, you start with a solid blueprint, your research design. You make sure that blueprint is objective, reliable, valid, and generalizable. And when you need to prove cause and effect, you use the gold standard, the experimental design, and you build it firmly on those three pillars: manipulation, control, and randomization.
You see, this whole framework, it's not just stuff for a textbook. It's the tool that turns our curiosity into credible evidence that can actually change nursing for the better and improve patient outcomes. So the blueprint is in your hands now. The real question is, what are you going to build with it?